Amy, you are someone that from the moment that I met you, I was like, this bitch is my
Sure.
friend. And I'll never forget walking into was it called the Scott? Was that where we stayed?
Well, I don't even remember. It was in Scottsdale. I know
Yeah.
that. I don't remember what the
Yeah.
name of it was.
And I just remember like we were there for something else, but like we were also there to have some fun. And I just connected with you. And ever since then, you've just had this like piece of my heart. And I feel like I've known you forever. And so everything that you've been through the last 2 years, I think what's really cool about our friendship is I didn't know really any of that. I don't live by you. So after the accident, I literally, it wasn't like I could pop by your house type of thing. And so to watch you as another female just going through so many different things that were happening all at the same time, which I want to get into more today. It was just I just really admire you and I respect you so much. I think admire is probably like the best word because you're so funny. And like besides being really pretty, which is just a perk, I really don't know how you do it all. And when you had announced that you were like publishing a book, like you had wrote a book and I saw the cover, one, it like made so much sense. But I'm just so proud of you and like everything that you have going on.
We're not supposed to cry in this, and I'm
I
gonna.
just needed to tell you that though. I just feel like that's so important, like for me to tell you that. And this doesn't even have to like make the podcast. I don't know where you find the strength. And maybe that's like my first question to you. Like, where do you find not maybe not even like the strength, but like the strength, the inspiration, the motivation to just show up 100% in literally everything that you have going on.
I ask myself that question a lot. Well, and you described the friendship, and I just want to say I was literally talking about you last night and trying to explain. When you meet somebody for the very first time, and you're just like, that bitch is my friend. Like we're on the same level. It's like an immediate connection. And I wish so badly that we did live together because I or live together. Do you want to
Well,
move in?
that too. I mean,
Um, I mean,
sure, fine, I'll move in.
okay, twist my arm. Live nearby because I feel like that's like you're one of those people that instantly connected with. Like I can be myself around, and it's so rare to find that. I think that it's something that I definitely treasure, and I'm glad that you feel the same way. So first, I just want to get that off my chest and
You
just
feel
say
the same.
I felt the same way, and I wish life hadn't been as crazy as it had because I feel like you and I should have connected at least 3 or 4 times minimum between now and then. But to answer your question, to be perfectly real with you, there have been so many days and nights of me just sitting on the floor crying, pleading, screaming, all the things that we do when we're going through grief and through hard times, just saying, I don't have any more to give. I don't have any more to give. And then knowing what the end goal is and knowing that I've got 3 little ones that are not only watching everything that I do. Um, I'm already man, 10 minutes in. Geez, Amy,
Got her.
watching
I need to.
everything that I do. They need to see me pick myself up. And there's a big piece here that's just God fueled, where you hear that inspiration or somebody shares something with you that you just have a line in something that you listen to or that you read or that somebody shares with you, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, okay, I can use that. I can. So it's like just filling up my tank just a little bit at a time. You ever go to the gas station, you got $3 left to your name, you're like, I just got to get home. It's like that, but metaphysically, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it is, really.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So for anyone that because this is like a newer podcast. I don't know if you know this, but I've been trying to get this off the ground for a while. And your episode will probably be somewhere like maybe in the first 10 episodes. And so my hope is that the people who have been listening, they're going to be listening to this, but also new people are going to be coming back and listening to this. And I really, one, I gave you one hell of an introduction that'll be recorded and added to this. But do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and something that you just launched? And then maybe from there we can like go back a couple years from when we like first met. And I want to start there. So
Cool. Yeah.
tell
So
us about yourself.
I am just a little small town girl, grew up in the country. You didn't have the easiest of upbringings. I'll just, throw that out there, started with not a whole lot. Um, and I have three little ones. And prior to meeting you, I was, with my spouse at the time. We were doing what normal people do with small babies, just kind of struggling, grinding away, building things. And we ended up, after years of just blood, sweat, and tears, we ended up with our dream farm, our dream house. We moved out to Utopia, Texas. And at that time, I met you through mutual friends who were doing Arbonne, because I had started doing Arbonne. Still to this day, love it. And I love every single person that I met on that journey. And luckily, you and I crossed paths at that time. And, life, I really was like, man, life is good. Like life is finally here. I am good. I feel good. My kids are happy. My kids are healthy. I've got a good marriage. I've got the house of my dreams. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was something that we worked really hard that we thought we were never going to get. And then all of a sudden, God sends this meteor, and then my whole life just, I feel like, imploded in moments and turned completely upside down. I had shortly after our trip, after you and I met, I just kind of started going through things with my husband. To make a long story short, I had uncovered some past doings that we had been struggling with some other things. And at that moment, I had decided we were going to separate. Nobody knew. I hadn't told anybody yet. We weren't going to tell the kids till they started school. And so we were kind of living separate for a couple weeks. It just started, and kind of figuring out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to go through a divorce. Do I really want a divorce? This is scary. I'm going to lose all this. Going through all of that is hard enough. And then my two youngest daughters were in an awful car wreck. And actually, it was a semi truck that hit them. Basically, so my 5-year-old at the time and her grandpa, they were with their grandparents, were T-boned by this semi truck. And we were told the first night that my little one wasn't going to make it. I mean, they were just like, there's no way, there's no hope. She was broken from head to toe. Poor baby had, her right hand was the only thing on her that wasn't casted up. And I mean, talk about, just unexplainable grief. Luckily she came through, and my middle child, she because she was on the other side of the car, was not harmed, but not physically. She had some bumps and some bruises, to be sure, and some whiplash and all of that, but she witnessed the whole thing. She saw the whole thing, and she saw her baby sister on the ground dying, being pronounced dead at the scene, all of these things that had gone on. And my youngest, she came through, and she just, every single thing, that's going to be a book one day too. I don't know if it's going to be a memoir, essay style. I haven't figured it out yet, but you and I were texting, and you're like, bitch, you better write this shit down. And I'm like, I am. I have that text somewhere. And I did. I did what I always do, which eventually led to the book that I have now. I'm always scribbling stuff down. Usually it's just for my personal self. We could talk about how I got to the book part, but anyway, and so I've written about that journey. And because of that happening simultaneously, going through a divorce, I mean, talk about the rug just being ripped out from underneath you. We really just spent 2 years trying to get her better, trying to help the older one, with her emotions and adjusting. I mean, it's a whole new life for us.
Right.
And then I've got my oldest, and she's affected by it as well, and just in different ways. And it's just on top of that, and then trying to get used to being a single mom and being divorced and all of that. It's just been hell, girl. It's been exhausting and tiring. So, when I say I've spent a lot of days on the floor crying, panic attack, not knowing where and what and who and where, there's been a lot of prayer and a
Mm.
lot of persistence, just there's just been a lot. So I've been a recluse. Instagram's a lot lighter these days. I talk a lot less, and I've spent a lot of time what I feel like is a cocoon, right,
Mhm.
about that in the book. And I feel like I'm coming back and taking baby steps. And so that's just kind of like all of it in a nutshell
Oh
there.
my gosh. Well, I want to back up a little bit. I, this podcast, the direction that I kind of decided to go is I'm talking about what I know, and that's people's businesses and projects and things like that. But there's this one piece that kind of keeps coming into my podcast, and that is the topic of grief. And it's so interesting to me. And I'm sure that you felt like this because it's not just like someone dying. I think when we go through grief, it's the end of relationships, it's the end of what was, it's, grieving a person that you also once were. And I want to like go back to the part that you talked about of like you and your husband decided to separate, and but that the right before the accident. Was your guys' intention to get a divorce, or was it just, like where was the mind at, or where was like the decision at, like right before the accident happened?
Yeah, it's funny because I at that point, because there was a lot, and in a marriage, I think, hold on, how do I word this? I struggled a lot during the marriage with a lot of things. And one of the main things was, when do you give up? Like, when is the,
Mhm.
you talk about you're supposed to go through thick and thin. This is supposed to be a life thing. And I was a down wife. I held a lot back. I held my tongue and a lot of things. And at that point, I was like, I'm not I'm not doing this forever. I'm not going to do it. And I think that I was probably about 85% there, but I think he could have probably talked me back into it. But what happened is, right after the accident, I actually had a lady, a girl, message me, and the stuff that I had found out about was stuff from like years ago, that was triggering the divorce. And it was just kind of like piling on to other things. But then there was this, we had just gotten back from the hospital, and this woman, yeah, who had been following me on Instagram. It's one of the reasons that I kind of cut back on Instagram and I don't post a whole lot. She'd been following me for the entire year and had been having an affair with my husband the entire year. And
Oh,
messaged me in the worst time of my life, like, hey, this has been going on and I just wanted to let you know. And I didn't know who she was at that time. I had a lot more followers, and I had a lot of people that I didn't know who they were. And my stuff wasn't private. And so I didn't know. I mean, I was like taking the kids to go and see him. I was at home holding down the fort, just doing all the things that I thought were the right things to do. And then he and I were just falling apart this whole time. And then to come and find out that there was that level of deception. And then I've got a child here that nearly died, messaging me out of spite because I guess he had called things off with her once the accident happened. And we were getting ready to reconcile. Like, we were talking about it. And I will say that I just had, even though I thought like, okay, maybe this is God's way of saying we need to get back together. I'm just going through thoughts that I had. And
yeah. Oh my gosh.
um, maybe this is God, like, bringing us back together. Sometimes it takes the worst of things. But in my gut, And this is something that I have learned in my gut. It just, it was like sour milk. It was just like sour milk. And I did not fully make that decision until that happened. Then I was like, nope. All right, nope. Because if this is going on and this was going on and he can be that deceptive and, reading all the things that he was actually saying to her, I was like, you know what?
Mm.
Um, I'm done. And it came down to, it's a very hard decision to
Yeah.
say, not only am I about to just light a torch to my life, all of this is going to get taken away from my kids, all these things that we have built, all these things, and I'm about to be the one that's going to burn it down. It came down to, if my girls came to me with this problem, would I tell them to stay married? It was no, absolutely not. And then at that point, I was done. And then at that point, it was, there's not a thing you can say to me in the world. I love you to pieces. I understand how painful this is going to be. It was excruciating, but no, we're not doing it. And
Uh, okay, go ahead.
that's when the decision was made, honestly.
Um, One, everyone listening to this is like, oh, sweet Amy, sweet, sweet Amy. But I need you to let you guys know, Amy, what is that? Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I know you. And what did you do from not hitting someone with your car when you got that message? Like, you had to have been, I mean, were you mad? Were you sad? Were you angry? Were you like if you would have called me and said, "Don't ask questions, get on a flight. I need your help." I would have been like, "Let's go." But that's so much easier to say, obviously, when you don't go through that. But when you got that message, yeah, like, were you mad? Were you sad? Were you angry? Like, what is getting that message like?
I was in the shower and I had a couple of messages come through, and got out of the shower and he's pittering around in the kitchen, and it was like a very, like, you ever had like a quiet mad where, like, if I say a word, I'm gonna light you on fire. It was more of just like a very quiet, like, this volcano is, I mean, I was already at my wits' end as it was, just from dealing with the accident and having been in the hospital for 6 weeks and just
Yeah.
no sleep, the whole thing. But when you're like quiet mad, when I don't even have a fucking word to say, I just showed him and I was like, get out,
Oh,
get out, get the out of my house. I don't know if I can cuss on this or not,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I
but
always click the
word,
explicit button. Just.
get the fuck out of my house. And he knew,
Oh.
don't say a word. I'm not even going to try to lie. And if he had, um, I don't really know what would have happened, but my kids are right there in the living room. And so it was just a very quiet, very, you're looking me in my eye right now and you just know, like, you don't say a word, get out. And yeah, I was furious, and I don't, I don't really know how in that moment I had the wherewithal to not just go in there with a bat or whatever,
Yeah.
all the things that go through your mind. But I also knew I had a lot riding on the line as far as, like, with the girls, and they had already been through so much, and I just think that kept me at bay.
Yeah. Oh my. Um, you guys, how long have you guys been together, been married and dated?
Yeah, so we have been going on 11 years together, and then we were getting ready. So our wedding anniversary was July 15th, and it would have been our fifth anniversary, and then the accident happened on the 16th. And I've got kind of a cool, well, I'll just go out and say it. Kind
Yeah.
of, I thank God every day that we had initially separated, and the reason is because we were getting ready to go on our anniversary trip. Every year, the kids would go and they would visit their grandparents for a week in the summer, and then we would celebrate our anniversary. And we were getting ready to go down to Big Bend, and where we would have been, we wouldn't have had any service.
Oh my
I
gosh.
thank God every day that we were separated, because we would have been on that anniversary trip and I wouldn't have even known, and I would have been devastated because it would have been 3 days before I would have even gone back. So
Oh my gosh.
there's so many like little things throughout my story over the last few years where I'm like, man, God was actually like really looking out for me there. And there's a lot of that too that I've developed into that we can talk about. But just a lot of like, I just go with the flow now. Like I used to be,
That's the
I used to,
process.
yeah, just, and the no, the moment that something else hits me or, knocks me down again, I'm like, well, there must be a reason for it. I don't
Yeah.
know yet, but we'll see, you know? So
So in those 11 years, obviously you guys like you not only built a life together, but you had friendships that were like mutual friendships. I think that that's a piece, whether it's a breakup or a divorce, is like always one of the saddest things is like you build this life with someone, you have these friends, and it does kind of feel like maybe that all changes or all, it's never the same. What was that experience like for you and that life that you guys had built, the people that you guys all know together, your friends, your family, what was that like? And then also, I mean, I feel like if anyone can give advice, I want to hear your advice for that.
you know um we did have that, and people, if I'm close to you, you're going to know what's going on with me. I'm just not one of those people that is going to sugarcoat things or
I love about you.
I'm just not. And I have friends that, his friends are married to my friends, and there's several of those, and they knew what was going on. But at the time, of course, I was going through like the anger process, and if somebody were asking, what's going on and all of that, I was very vocal about it, but also knowing that I have to keep some things to myself. So I had to evolve in that sense, because there are relationships with my kids with their kids, and things get said and things get passed around. And as angry as I was, the last thing that I wanted to do was to be a topic of conversation.
Mhm.
And people love to talk about when you're breaking up, no matter if they're your good friends or not. And I get it. And I get it. And I've been there. But the last thing that I wanted to do was be a topic of conversation. And so I did hold back some. And, it wasn't that they didn't know what was going on, but I just wasn't completely open with my vitriol. And my friends there in Utopia, they didn't know much about him because he was gone all the time. A lot of it was because of work, a lot of it was by choice. And so, he was very adamant, like, I don't want you telling anybody. I don't want you telling them. They don't need to know our business. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, well, sorry, they know. But there were a lot of moments, especially where there were mutual friends involved, where I love you. You're my girl. I know you have my back, but also I don't have the time, and I don't have the interest to really just be a topic
Right.
here. And so I just held back a little bit. And also because I didn't want to, I kept that in mind with the book too. I didn't want to completely
Mhm.
just bash him and bash our marriage is for what it was, because then the kids hear that and the kids hear about that, and I just didn't want that being passed on to them. So I was quieter than what you would normally probably see me as, if
And
that
that
makes.
has to be, I think, in that grief journey, knowing that you're like, I know I'm a spicy female. I know that I can, give it where it needs to be gave. I think that that's probably a part too where you're like, when you are quieter, you're like, am I being my true self? Am I being my true self right now? Or am I, validating my own feelings? Did you go through a process of that? Like just questioning how you were handling things and what you were doing? Like, was there a lot of moments like that?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of moments like that, and again, I've completely evolved as a person. I think that I've learned a lot, and that was I question that a lot, but also I always just go back to the end goal or the end idea that, again, I don't want to bash my kid's dad. I don't want to be that angry. I decided from the get-go, I am not going to be the angry bitter wife. I am not going to give this that energy. Like, I'm going to be angry in private. And yes, there are going to be moments where I'm texting him awful things because I did that. And yes, there are moments where, um, talk about it in the book, real moment. I go out to the barbecue pit and I'm burning all our shit, everything, vows, wedding pictures. I mean, there were moments of where that anger was there, but I had to be aware of, you know, this needs to change here. This needs to be tweaked here because this is the end goal and because this is the end idea here. And I just never wanted to be portrayed as the angry, bitter wife because I knew I was going to be angry in the moment, but that was not going to be my identity.
Right,
And I think
right.
that kept me at bay, you know?
Right, right. No, oh my gosh, I love that. So you kind of just mentioned too, like you guys were living on your farm. That was like a dream situation for you. Is that a factor in what kept you in your situation for a while? Was that this life that you had worked really hard for is here? And were you afraid that like there was no questions asked, this was going to go away if we were separated?
1,000%. There's
Oh,
so many moments, and not just that, not just the physical material things, but do I want to end this family? Do I want to put my kids through this? Do I? That's when a lot of like questioning my own values and questioning who I really was when I was going through, or a lot of things that we went through, where I was like, if I decide to move on from this, is this true to who I am? So there were moments leading up to that where absolutely he got away with a lot more than anybody would get away with today. But he got away with a lot more because, there was all of that there. And I think that he thought that I wasn't going anywhere because of that. And
mm,
I'm pretty sure, I don't remember, I'm pretty sure he even said that at some point, like, you're not really going to leave. And I think he really thought that I wasn't. Um, and it was hard because taking that away from everybody and stuffing everybody into a 2-bedroom apartment was hard to swallow.
oh,
That was hard to swallow because that was all that I had. That's all that I could find. Like the rentals, there just wasn't a whole lot rental wise. I had to be more budget conscientious because I had been a stay-at-home mom and I had contributed some to the income, but I had really scaled back on real estate and I had really scaled back on what I had been doing previously because I was at home
mhm.
taking care of the kids. And then all of a sudden, I've got to not only, all right, guy, let's sell your horse. I mean, I
Oh,
bawled. Well, y'all saw how close I was with my animals. I bawled. The idea of just having to sell them and the kids and seeing the pain in their eyes, like, oh, okay, yeah, there's Bobby, bye, tell Bobby bye, and having to take everybody and stuff them into this apartment, like that fear kept me there for a very, very, very long time. Um, but again, it reached a point where it's like, this is not going to change.
right.
And I'm not doing this shit forever. I can get back on my feet and I can offer so much more to my kids than this being a sad housewife. I'm not
Mhm.
going to I'll do it all day if you're taking care of me and you love me. We've got me all day. What do you need, baby? You want me to rub your feet, fold your socks, what you need? I got it. But I'm not going to do all that for somebody that's just going to treat me like I don't exist.
Right,
I
right.
can't do that.
Oh my gosh. There had to be so many moments. I mean, I can't imagine as a fellow farm girl, like getting rid of those things. I mean, there's so much work and there's something that you work on every single day, whether it's feeding them and taking care of them. That had to be such a change. When you were deciding what to do next, like, all right, well, we're gonna have to move into this apartment. What was that humbling process like? Or was it like, this is our only option and this is what we're gonna make happen? And one of your daughters, I know that you keep referring to like little ones, but one of your daughters is, she knew what was going on the whole entire time. Like, how was that as a mom, like navigating those conversations?
There was a lot of vacillating between pull our panties up, let's go. We got to do this. We don't have a choice, because that was really the only thing that could get us through.
Mhm.
And then it was very humbling. It's embarrassing. Like you're selling your stuff. Everybody knows what's going on at this point, whether you've said a word or not. You're
Yeah.
living in a small town. Everybody knows.
How
Um,
big is your town?
yeah. Oh, I don't even know. I mean, we don't even have a stoplight. We've got one like corner store, the post office, and a gas station and a feed store. That's about it. Which we loved. I mean, you're talking like this is our dream life, and talk about a fall from grace. I mean, I was on that trip in Arizona. We were on just oh, and I meant it. I
Yeah.
loved my husband. I have such a great husband. Like God's really blessed us. Like I feel like we really made it. Like this is where we want to be. And then all of a sudden, that's just stripped from you. It's a lot, you know, it's very humbling. There's a whole lot of swallowing of your pride that you have to do. And um it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. And there were a lot of moments I was calling um she's one of my best friends, that really she's a sister, when I'm like truly just crying like a little girl, like now I've got life on rewind and I'm in this apartment, and maybe I should just go back. And I had somebody that gave me a really good analogy. If you talk about like the Bible, the story of um the Egyptians, and Moses, they breaks them out and they're in the wilderness, and they're like, yeah, like they start talking about we should go back because we were fed and we had somewhere to sleep and we weren't out in the elements, and instead of like waiting for that promised land and getting through all of that, they wanted to double back. And it's like, yeah, but don't you remember you were a slave? Like, don't you remember that
Mhm.
this was what you were dealing with? So there were a lot of moments like that where I'm like, I am in the complete utter darkness and I don't have a choice.
Mhm.
And there were times where I'm like, maybe I should go back. Maybe, I wanted to double back. Like, maybe this is where it was comfortable. This is what I know. This is what I knew. And this is what they knew. And maybe it's better for everybody if I just, call and apologize and cancel the sale. And, so that there was a lot of struggling with that, a lot of
Yeah.
struggling with that. And then also I loved him, and I loved our family, and I wanted so bad just to be like a good wife and a good mom, and just having to I accept a new identity was crushing.
Oh
Awful.
my gosh. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's one, I appreciate you sharing all of this. That's not easy, but I will say this, my intentions are that the person who needs to hear this is hearing this podcast right now, and one, it either gives them the strength to leave a situation that they know they shouldn't be in. So I know that this is going to help someone. Like I know it is. Like I just like have it in my soul. But let's talk about your new identity. And, the day that you turn the key into your apartment and the girls are there, and you're like, was there a moment where the should I go back stopped and that's when the new identity started? Or was there kind of like this overlap?
It was total overlap. I mean,
Mhm.
some days I woke up saying, okay, maybe we need to get a plan together and go back. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, fuck that, you know? And it was inching in the other direction. And I really, really had to be steadfast. And I really, really, really had to remember what it was and remember how unhappy I was. But, there's one of the poems. It's like, I was sad when I was in it. And now I'm sad when I left. And this fucking sucks. And you can't see what's ahead, and you don't know what's in front of you, and you don't know if you're going to make it out, and you don't know if you've just ruined everybody's life for everything. But there were a lot of moments where, I mean, I wasn't even a new identity yet. I don't think I was, other than I was just in pieces, like my
Mhm.
whole life just shattered, you know
Was there anything in those moments of first, still teetering back and forth where you were like, okay, I'm gonna do this? And was it like a dream board, or you wrote down your goals, or you wrote a letter to yourself? Like even beyond like starting to write the book, or maybe that was the thing that happened. But what was, if you look back on this journey, were there any first, we'll call them like personal development steps that you started to take to be like, I've got to start feeling better about this. Like something's got to change.
Yeah, I've said it a lot to a lot of people that have asked. Right before everything happened, like the year, 2 years before it had happened, I had taken a really, really strong stance on like self development and self improvement, and I thank God for that every day, because I was in a place prior to all of this happening where I was reading, just absorbing as many books as I could. I was feeling strong spiritually, I was feeling strong mentally, physically. I really felt like I was on top of my game. And there would be times where I'd be like, I'd rather listen to a true crime podcast than put on this audiobook. And there was this outside force. I was like, no, maybe you should, go ahead and put in that John C. Maxwell book instead. We did a lot of that in Arbonne, and it was one of those things again that I think I was just led to it
Hmm.
at the right time without even knowing it.
Hmm.
And so fast forward to the process, there were so many skills and mindset techniques, and there was so much more understanding because of that development that I had gone through.
Hmm.
And I think that was the foundation of me being able to pick myself up. I really do. Um, because there's things that you learn when you dive into parts of your shadow self and parts of your trauma and parts, and really a big thing, a big help for moving on is understanding. And when I went to therapy, because I was like, I'm going to lose my mind if I don't, for everything. And I just was telling the therapist, I'm like, man, I just feel stuck. Like I just feel forgotten. I feel like God has left me. I feel like I'm ruining everybody's lives, and I just feel like I'm in this like darkness, and there's no light. And his advice, he said, um, losing love or losing a relationship, especially one that's this established, where you guys have a life together, is a lot like losing somebody. And you made the same reference to death, because you're not only processing losing that person, you're talking about losing the plans that you guys have made, the future events, the idea of who you are, the ideal of, what your life is and all of that. And he said, you should really start writing it down. And then I knew about the stages of grief, but he was like, right now you're going through one of these stages, because there's like the 5 standard stages of grief. And he's like, right now you're going through depression, and you've just got to know that none of this happens in a straight line, and there's a lot of back and forth. He said, but at the end, eventually you will reach acceptance. And he just really shed a lot of light on accepting things comes with understanding things. And if you write it all out, it helps give you a visual. And so the foundation of the self-development, to circle back around to your very short question to my long-winded
You're
answer,
no, you're good.
the foundation of the self-development led to knowing that I needed to get into therapy, and then the therapist shining a light on knowing that I needed to map this out for myself, my own personal journey, putting it down on paper, really helped me see, oh, this is why I'm here. This is how I got here, not with the accident, but just with the relationship. And these are baby steps that I can take into a new life. And I think it helped. And that's what started the concept of the book. Is I started reading through things that I was writing down, and I could pinpoint, oh, you know, this is me bargaining here. This is denial. This is, whatever it is. And because I'm constantly writing things in the moment, I realized I had looked back and I had all this stuff that I had written down throughout the relationship, good times and bad. And I could really see the leading up to the ending of the relationship. And so there's a whole section called death. And that's just stuff that I had written leading up to seeing the foundation crumbling. And so all of those things in combination are what kind of helped me get out of it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's talk about the book. So you'd been writing things down. When was the like light turned on where you're like, I'm gonna make this into a book?
Well, that outside force that had was like, maybe you should keep on with this self-development journey, started talking to me again. And without better words, outside voice, that spiritual nagging that we have, that gut feeling that initially gave me that sour feeling was just like, maybe you should start putting this into categories. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of curious. Let me just start, putting this down. So I started putting it down. Maybe I can give this to the girls one day. Maybe they can read it. Maybe I can pass this on to them when they're going through a bad relationship. And then, maybe there's a lot of people that go through this. Maybe they could benefit from it. So then I started a little blog. And then that started kind of getting some traction, and people were responding and sending me messages like, this, oh, I felt this, like, when you hear that song and you just like play it over and over in the car, you're like, I feel that line so much. And I was getting that feedback. And then I was sharing it with friends who have, been going through divorce, just kind of sharing some of the stuff. And, they're the real friends, the ones that are like, girl, that shirt's ugly, go in and change before we leave. Like, those are the ones that I was sending it to. And they're like, this is really good. And then I started thinking maybe this is something that I can put out there. But then I got the idea of a book instead of a blog. Like, I can just put it all out and, put it all in poetry form. And there was a lot of like, who the hell do you think you are? You're going to put it in a book? Like, what? Again, there's that nagging, like, no, actually you should. Like, this is something you need to do. So I just pulled my big girl britches up and said, okay, we're going to do it then. And then I just did it.
Oh my gosh. How long ago did you start that? Like when did that start?
So in our little bitty apartment, I started sorting it out. And that's around the time that I said, I don't know if I'm going to get through this, but I'm at least going to put this shit down. So I started putting it down, and then it kind of snowballed. I started, okay, getting dedicated like every single night. I started putting it into categories. So we're talking like 2021, 2022. And
Yeah.
then I started
Wow.
going to the library and getting some inspiration, and being like, okay, I have this topic, maybe I need some more for the denial section. So I have this topic. So I would just go and I would just read stuff just to kind of get in the feel, like
Yeah.
making myself right. Cause I didn't have anything else going on, because on top of everything else, the real estate market not crashed, but like all the interest rates jumped up. And so like my business came to a halt, and I'm like, I don't got shit else to do but sit at home and cry, or go and do something productive. So that's what I did. And I would just go sit at the library, and I would just read for inspiration, and I would just write. And then I would just come home, and instead of watching my 90-day fiance, I'd, go put a couple of sections together. So it took a full year of just making myself, again, so that I'm kind of distracted by
Uh-huh.
all the noise and other
Right.
bullshit going on. I've got something productive. And so it took a full year. So that was all of the end of 2021, 2022. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And since its launch, which I think I'm gonna do like a giveaway on my Instagram for the book. So yeah, the week that this comes out, I think that's what I need to do. But
You want
um was there kind of, you had mentioned that in the beginning stages it was for you, and then you're like, well, maybe I can give it to the girls, and it could be something they read when they're going through a hard time. Now that it's in paper form and anyone can get their hands on it, what is kind of like your intentions for this piece of art?
my intention is, I just hope, being an entrepreneur, you sometimes you dabble. There's been a lot of things that I've put out, and I'm always like terrified, like the podcast, and I was gonna do a boutique and all these things. This was the first thing I've ever out in my life that I've said, here it is.
I don't expect anything in return.
I would love for it to profit and do all these things, of course, but I don't I don't give a shit. It's in the sense that I don't care. There's going to be somebody that's going to read this book and they're going to go, this is the most amateur garbage I have ever read in my life. And I don't care because I have read through it. Now I've had it in my hand. Of course I wrote them, but it's different,
Mhm.
when I've had it in my hand and I got to the end of it. I'm like, somebody's going to read this and somebody needs to know that there is light at the end of that tunnel. And they're sitting in this dark place that I was sitting in. There's depression was really difficult to write about in a sense because it's kind of embarrassing. You're like, I literally got up to take the kids to school and went right back to bed. There was a period in time where I didn't, I was holed up. I
Mm.
wasn't answering calls, I wasn't answering texts, I was ordering food, I wasn't cooking. It was paper plates, plastic forks, and I felt like the worst mom in the world. But that was just part of going through it, and somebody needs to know that. So
Mhm.
in that sense, I want this to help somebody. I want somebody to know. I want them to read some of this and I want them to be able to relate to it and to know this is real and this other people are going through it and you're not a shitty person and you're just going through something.
Mhm.
And there is an end of the road, and God's like, surprise, we don't know what it's gonna look like. You're just gonna have to wait, but just stick with it. And also know that vacillating and maybe going back, and maybe sometimes you do go back and you reconcile, and maybe it's wonderful. And
Mhm.
I'm all for that too. But either way, I just want somebody, my intention is for somebody to read this and to know that they're not just they're not the only ones with these angry, awful thoughts and these depressed thoughts and this bargaining feeling of maybe I should go back and all that. It's all I think we can all relate, even if we've never been through a divorce. If you've lost a love, um, I
Mhm.
bet you can relate to some of this, and hopefully it helps them get through that.
I would love to talk to you and ask you a little bit about just your journey with, and I hate saying like your journey with depression, because like you didn't ask for that. You didn't ask to go through it and those stages of grief that you were mentioning. When you're someone who is the life of the party, so much fun, the happiest person in the room, I'm sure all of the things that you've been called before, and you're going through those moments of depression where you're just dropping the girls off from school and going back home. I don't think people understand in that grief journey how bad that feels. Because when you're going through it, you know that that's not right. You're not that person, but you're like, I also just want to feel for a little bit. And this is how I feel. And that teeter tottering is something that it's like a symptom I can't even describe. Can you speak to that just a little bit of, navigating through that? Because I've heard you be described as that person before, like, oh my God, Amy, she's so much fun. Like, she's so happy. Like, she's going to be fine. She's so strong. But going through those really bad days, like, can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, depression in general, I think is something that should be talked about more. And I'm glad that there is more conversation around it because, you know, just clinical, I guess you could say, depression. It runs in my family. And my mom, she was a very melancholy kind of person, and I saw her go through depression, and now I can understand and I can have empathy for what she was going through, but also make the decision that I don't want to be that person that lets that take over my life. And so depression in general I've struggled with. I do think that there are some genetic ties to it. I've struggled with depression, and usually sometimes there's a catalyst, like something going on in life, but sometimes it's just, man, I don't know. I haven't seen the sunshine in 4 days and I can't really tell you why, but I feel like shit and I don't want to do nothing and I don't want to talk to nobody. And I think that there is this misconception where, I might be the life of the party and all these things, but it doesn't mean that I don't still struggle.
Mhm.
And I think, like you said, I think people forget that. And I'll be real with you. I think that going through depression, you just have to learn. I tell my kids it's like a sickness because my oldest, she struggles with it now too. And I want to be that light for her and tell her, like, it's like a sickness, like in the middle of it, you feel like, God, this flu is never going to go away. I'm never going to be able to breathe again. I'm never going to stop coughing again. And it feels like that with depression. And there is a peak where you, just like when you have a fever, like you have that worst day, but there's always the other side of it. And sometimes you get out of it because you've gone to the doctor and gotten a shot, or sometimes you just have to wait it out. There's many ways, and I try to like give her those tools that kind of help me. And I think having experienced depression before, it helped me when I'm in the moment of it to be like, hey, it's okay. How to baby myself, hey, it's okay. And
Mhm.
knowing there's people that are like, dang, it's fine. She's good. And, they're not checking up because she's good. And,
Mhm.
or looking at me and being like, why is she being such a baby? Like, da, da, da. I'm sure there was some of that going on, but just kind of having to hold myself in and kind of hold myself
Mhm.
and just baby talk myself, like, it's okay. You know how this goes.
Mhm.
You're going to be good. This sucks right now, but we know. And I think that anybody suffering through depression has to know that it's an illness, and there some seasons are worse than others, and realistically are, literally and metaphysically,
Yeah.
but so yeah, I just think experience. I just think having known that, okay, this is what it is, and you know what? Stay home. Don't do shit. You can get away with it, don't. Order that
Yeah.
food. And I talk about that in the books. One of the things I talk about, if that's what you got to do, vacillate, be
Mhm.
angry, be sad, be life of the party, go back down, pick yourself back up. That's part of it. It's part of
Mhm.
the journey.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, that's so beautifully said. Would you say that before all of this, before separation, before the accident, if you would have had a friend going through the same exact thing, do you think you would have been able to show up for them the same way before as you would now? Or did going through all of this kind of I mean, there's two parts to this. I say this because after losing my mom, I had handfuls of friends and family members. I was the first person to lose someone that significant in my life in this group. And I had so many people say, I just don't know what to say. Oh my gosh, I have no words, or I don't know what to say to you, or it took them weeks or months, or I still haven't heard from them. And I was very, very angry. Like, I was so angry that I was like at the point where I was like, I'm going to make a list of all the people who haven't reached out to me. And
Right.
I remember there finally was a moment not that long ago, like last month, where I was like, it's not their fault that they don't know how to talk to me about this, but when they go through this, I will be the first fucking person with a lasagna on their doorstep, because that was actually what I needed. I needed you to bring me food. I needed you to just stop by my house because I'm not going to answer your calls. And like, that's nothing personal to you. That's like, going through that. So I say that to say if any of my friends would have lost their mom prior to me losing my mom, I would have been the same way. I wouldn't have known how to show up for them, but now afterwards I do know. Was that very similar, with your situation and that grief process of your friends and how it was handled? And now looking back, do you think you can be a better person for them if they go through this?
I can only hope so. I have had several friends that subsequently went through divorce right after my divorce, and they reached out, and I hope that what I share helps them, and I hope that what I share is beneficial. And I'm a long-winded person, so you're never going to get a short answer. Hopefully it's worth something. I hope that it is beneficial to them, and I think so. I think that going through something, it's one of the reasons I think maybe we go through it,
Mhm.
because there are other people that now go through it, and you have a completely different perspective. And it's
Mhm.
the same with, my experience with Sadie. And, having that thought of like, God, I couldn't imagine losing my child. I couldn't imagine. But when I was in those moments and knowing what thoughts were going through my head, and now I see. Now I see. I think so. I think that there's more I think there's more purpose to our pain than what we even realize. Because if we can't use our pain and help somebody else with their similar pain, um, I think that there's a lot lost there. And I think that that perspective is
Mhm.
there for a reason. I don't think it's by accident. I think that's why there's some contrast there in life. Because because you're seeing the things through their eyes,
Mhm.
and you are able to help. And yeah, sometimes when somebody's going through something like that, like grief, through loss of love or death, sometimes they just need you to sit. Sometimes they just bring me some food so I don't have to cook, come do my dishes, and just don't say a word. I don't
Mhm.
need to talk. I just need
Yeah.
somebody there.
Yeah, I don't wanna talk about it. I just would love some takeout. Um, okay, I'm really excited to ask you this question. So, books launched, divorce is final, kids are doing great. Are you on the dating scene? What first off, okay, one, I, like, have all the questions about this. There has been a couple of moments we're around the same age, I think, and there has been so many moments where I'm like, "I can't imagine going back out into the, like, dating scene." Like, so much has changed. So like, there's so many apps and, like, ways to meet people, and there's a lot of weirdos out there. Also, Instagram, you have everyone you could ever imagine available at your fingertips if you want them. Girl, how is it out there? What are you doing? Are you dating? Are you not dating? Have you sworn off men or women forever? Like, whatever you're into, like.
I could never. I'm too much of a romantic. I could never swear off love forever. I'm just I love the pain, I guess. I don't know about what Rihanna said, something like that. I am. So I am in a serious relationship, but I have had to experience the dating, ugh, the trash can of dating and what it is. And it is not all that great. It's funny because like I remember like going through like just fights with my husband at the time and being like, all right, I'm gonna let this slide because I really don't want to date again. Like it's tough like having to start all over and you're just what's your favorite color? There's like things on TikTok that's so real. Like shallow conversations and just having to deal with all that. Um I feel so I've done a couple of soft launches on my Instagram and then I take it down because I get like, I really, again, I just don't want to be a topic. I just don't want to be a topic of conversation. I don't want to be, um, I don't know. So I hesitate now a lot more than I used to with putting anything out on Instagram. It's not great. We'll just put it like, we'll just say it like that. But, one thing about I think going through shitty relationships is that you know a little bit better for what you want to do the next time. And I will say that going through this divorce just like shot my standards way up. Like there is a whole list of shit I'm never putting up with again. There's no way. I don't care who you are. I mean, Travis Kelce is like really hot, you know, and Taylor's got him. Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. But I'm just saying, if he shut up at my door today, there's just a whole lot he couldn't get away with.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so there's that. And luckily, I think that I have found somebody that is on that same page with me. They've been divorced, they have kids, they are in a stage of life um, similar to mine, and they're very supportive and they're very, I don't know, they're just like a complete opposite of what I was married to. And I'm like, wow, is this what I was missing out on this whole time?
Mm. Ugh.
And so
Better than you expected.
better than I expected. And then, there was that time, where, you're going on dates and you're meeting people and, I don't really, Instagram and the whole thing. If somebody messages me on Instagram or Facebook, I'm instantly skeptical. I have no interest. And then I did try like the dating apps for like 3 minutes and I was like, ugh, this is
This is
garbage. This is garbage. But it's but if you're getting back on your feet and you're just like the training wheels and you just like, I hadn't dated in 11 years. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so it was fun for that. It was fun, like, getting dressed up and going and, getting the butterflies and
right.
all that. That was scary. But I would say that there's some value in that. And I think that knowing like what you're looking for is
Yeah.
very beneficial, and like knowing like, okay, this is where I messed up my last relationship. Like, okay. And then just having some standards, which who had standards when they were 19? I didn't, you know.
Right. I've God. Was there like a checklist that you had? Like, were there very specific things that you were looking for? You're like, if I'm gonna get back out here and do this again, he must be X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard so many things of like advice of where you write down like what you need and you kind of like don't deviate from that checklist. And yeah, I think the guy I'm with, it's funny. It's weird. There's like weird things on there. Like for one of the things, like I wanted someone that could understand kind of like having a traumatic childhood a little bit, and that's maybe like done some similar self-development to get through that, because I think a big part of my reason, my spiritual journey here, is to guide my children through stuff that I didn't don't ever want them to experience,
Mhm.
and you know, the generational curses and the whole thing. And so I kind of wanted someone that was at least aware of that, if maybe not having experience and maybe had some similar self-development.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was like their background, and he understands it, and so he can understand when I'm talking about. He understands like what it took to get through that, and I think that was that was a big part. But yeah, definitely had a list, and it's weird. It's like some of the like most random things. You're like, oh wow, no, I didn't think that was going to come true, but it.
Didn't expect to get that one, but we'll put that one on here anyways.
Yeah, there were
Um,
some extras for sure. There were some extras for sure.
do you, so your daughter, she's at the age where she can like, start dating boys, things like that. Do you have any advice to her or anyone that's parenting teenagers when they're, getting into those first relationships or interested in boys or girls, what has been like your conversation with her, seeing so much just over the last 2 years, but her life in general?
So yeah, she is actually dealing with her own situationship right now. Situationship, you know,
Oh,
they're not serious about you, but they want you in their lives and they take advantage of that. And you know, she's like knee deep in that. And so my job as a parent is to give the information to make sure that she's safe, and then she's going to take the rest and run with it, because you know we're talking, she's almost 17, she's almost an adult. um and what's funny is that when she was about 12 years old, everybody had boyfriends and girlfriends, and I understood that that was the reality. But I told her then, I said, well, I'm sorry, we're just not doing that. If you want to have a little boyfriend at school and you know all of that, like that's fine, but you're not getting a phone, we're not texting nobody, we're not going anywhere. Like, and I told her then, I said, you know, relationships are very it's just hard. It's hard on the heart, especially as young as you are. You're not going to find somebody that's serious, you know, all the things that I think parents tell them. And she she would get so mad at me. Funny story, I had a friend, she was a teacher at the school, and she hit me up one day. She's like, "Hey, I'm just going to let you know that you know she's talking to this boy and he is not the one you want her talking to." And she's like going down the rap sheet of like all these things. I told her, I was like, "Hey, you're not allowed to talk to this boy." And she's like, "How did you know? Like, how did you know?" And I'm like, "Well, I just know. Okay, I'm mom. I just know." Well, then my friend calls me back. She's like, "Yeah, so they're still dating. They walk down the hall holding hands. And actually, you know where you sit and you pick her up? She like goes around through the breezeway. So she would go get my youngest and she'd bring her around to the car, but she would go around the back way." So one day I met her over there. She didn't realize I had
ah,
parked. And she was like, holding hands with him. They were like hugging, getting ready, like, you know, go, you know, split up so that I wouldn't see. And I was like, you know, I was like, you need to tell him right now you're breaking up. And I made her break up with him in front of everybody. And maybe that wasn't like the kindest thing to do. And she was devastated and she was so mad at me.
oh,
And I just remember having that conversation with her later that night. And I said, look, because she at the time she was obsessed with dogs. I said, look, if our dog, Ellie, at the time, if Ellie, if you saw her about to run out the house and run in front of a big semi truck, would you let her do it? She says, no, I'll go get her. I said, well, she's going to be so mad. She really wants to. Are you going to let her do it? She said, well, no, why would I do that? And I'm like, that's the thing. As a parent, I can see things that you can't see. And if I can stop it, I'm not going to let you go out and run in front of that big truck. Right. 2 years later, that boy was in juvie and she's gone through so many things. I just try to be real with her. And I don't know if that's good parenting advice or not. Check back with me in 5 years. We'll see how it works. But I just want her to understand, and I try to make her understand. And now I've got my 10-year-old going into 11. And it's funny because she'll tell her, like, hey, you should really kind of like listen to what mom says because, she's telling the truth, and she's trying to kind of guide her through some of the things that I had to guide her through. And
Yeah.
she shares some of the same advice. It's so funny. And she was just telling her the other day, like, you really shouldn't worry about dating right now. Like, it's really more trouble than it's worth. And I promise you, like, it's not going to matter. And of course, the middle one doesn't, she's like in one ear, out the other.
Typical
But
middle child.
yeah, so, but she's close enough with me where she can tell me, and I think part of that has just been because I've been real with her from the beginning. Like,
Mm.
I'm not going to judge you for your decisions, but I'm going to tell you,
It's right
I'm
or
going
wrong.
to stop you if it's dangerous, and I'm going to tell you if it's not looking good, hun. I'm just going to
Yes.
stop.
Oh my
So,
gosh, I love that.
yeah, she's in her situationship right now. I send her TikToks, and she's like, I know, mom, I know. I can't get it. I can't let him go. And I'm like, I know it's hard.
Take
But
a number. There's going to be a lot more of them. Just don't get hung up on the first one you see.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, I get it. I'm like, I've been there. I'm like, I know this person's awful for me, and I just keep running back to him, and it just is what it is. Like,
Right. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that you did that. That's something that my mom would have totally done. So I can appreciate that. And I just love the relationship that you have with your daughters too. That's something that it just makes me smile when you do share them or just like seeing updates from them. Just like they're their own human beings now, like off living their own lives. Your daughter a junior this year or a senior this year?
she's a junior.
Okay,
Oh
does
wait,
she?
no, no, no. I lied. Hold on. She's a sophomore because she's summer baby. So we
Yep.
start a year later. So she's
So she's got plenty of time to figure out.
and
Plenty
she's
of
so pretty. I'm like, girl, let
time.
them
And it's gonna get better. So just
slow it down. Let them kind of sweat it a little. You're
yeah.
good.
Oh my gosh. Girl, I literally could sit and talk to you forever, but why don't I'll add this stuff in the show notes, but would you pimp yourself out, let people know where they can find you, where they can find your book, and then I'll also make sure that I add all this stuff in the show notes as well.
Yes, I will pimp myself out. I don't have a whole lot going on social media right now. I've got some stuff in the works now that I'm kind of coming back to life, so to speak. I have a copy of the book here. It's Dearly Divorced. It's very image heavy. I wanted the imagery to kind of carry along with the emotions in the poetry. The poetry itself is not Shakespearean or hard to translate. It's very easy to read and hopefully easy to relate to. So you can find it anywhere that books are sold. Online is probably the easiest, fastest route. And then my Instagram is at the Amy Bolding. That's just my personal one. And then if you want to follow along with poetry or any of the other stuff that I'm going to be writing, because I have a couple of other, like I said, projects in the works, it's just Amy Bolding Poetry on Instagram. Same thing on Facebook. TikTok I'm playing with. I don't have a whole lot there yet. But yeah, if you want to see me kind of slowly come back to life, that's kind of what's going on right now. So
My gosh, Amy, thank you so much. You were someone who, when I was making my master list of everyone that I wanted to talk to on this podcast, you were right up there at the top. And so I'm so glad that we found a date that works. I can't wait to put this podcast out. I hope everyone goes and buys this book and reaches out to you and follows you. Because I knowing you, I know that one, your journey moving forward is going to be so worth watching, but also these new projects that you have coming too, I think this is just the start of it. I truly believe that.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I miss you to pieces. Now that life has kind of settled out, I mean,
Girls trip,
we got to revisit
Scottsdale.
that trip. Like, we're gonna do it.
Do we need to go back to Scottsdale? Is that what you're telling?
please, let's do it.
You
That's where I
can
want to go. You
just
can
look
make
at me the right way and I'll book my ticket.